I can do things at WED without asking anybody, even my wife.
Coney Island, world's biggest barrel of
And
fun.
anywhere else your imagination takes you.
Okay, we've done that. Now what?
To get the whole show now, you hurry.
Anything's possible in Disneyland.
Welcome aboard the Themed Attraction Podcast, where we take you for a ride through the mad world of theme park design, that is. You've just stepped aboard a voyage of discovery and discussion with theme park industry masters of the craft. I'm your skipper, Freddy Martin, and sharing the deck with me as always is theme park designer, master planner, and chief creative officer of Storyland Studios, Mel McGowan. Where are we headed today, Mel?
Well, Freddie, I hope you've got enough diesel in the tank because we're heading to China. Almost. We're heading to a little piece of China here in Burbank, California to hang out with Senior Project Director for Miziker Entertainment, Chung. He's part of a new generation of young creatives making waves in themed entertainment these days through the discipline of entertainment. Sean's got an amazing story that sort of runs parallel to the story of modern China's own transformation into the world's fastest growing theme park and tourist market.
I agree. Sean's a really talented guy. He's not afraid to take on huge designs like a half-mile long nighttime parade that really is a genetic ancestor to the Main Street Electrical Parade, which we'll get to. And he's even been honored with the TEA Thea Award as well. So we're excited to have him on the show. All right, folks, keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the boat because this episode is about to leave the dock. Hit it, Sam. So let's talk about China. There's an incredible amount of theme park business happening in China right now. We're not just talking about new parks and resorts, but there's like whole theme park franchises that are being birthed and putting out multiple theme parks as we speak. You've even, I know you're under NDAs, et cetera, but you've had a chance to do some design work for parks that are there. Talk about how China is just becoming that place for the fastest growing theme park markets in the world.
Well, all I can say is you got to just go and check it out. I mean, because I've been over China a few times, again, adopted a couple of kids and been over there for project work. Until you get over there and see the scope and scale of urbanization, of development, the diverse range in quality and quantity of these attractions, it is just mind altering. And again, just from a simple frame of reference, I mean, in the U.S., there hasn't been a new theme park at least to open in the last 10 years. I think the last one that opened closed a year later. That was, I think, Hard Rock Park in 2008. And, Universal announcing a new park is kind of a big deal, you know, with this Epic universe, because there just aren't a lot of those that happen in the U.S. That often. But again, when you go to different parts of the world, Middle East, again, it took Disney, I think, 18 years to go from one park to 3 parks.
Yeah, right.
Whereas Dubai Parks and Resorts actually tried and succeeded in at least opening 3 parks within a year of opening, which is insane. I don't know. Time will prove it.
We know a lot of the same people who have
exactly. So I'm not going to comment
damage.
further on that. But again, the scope and scale of the projects we're working on in China, where you have things like the world's largest developer doing Magic Kingdom scale parks and designing them intentionally to be rubber stamped and cloned throughout the country in relatively simultaneously. I mean, it is mind blowing.
Yeah. It's tremendous. Well, our guest today is Sean Chung, and the reason we're talking about China is because the company he works for, Miziker Entertainment, is doing a lot of work around the world, a variety of different places. But specifically, as we get into the interview, you're going to learn a little bit about how Sean's story just sort of parallels China, but a little bit about Miziker Entertainment so you can understand where he's coming from. They're sort of a live entertainment production company, live and screen-based entertainment, but they've got their roots in parades. We'll get into that a little bit, but here's where their roots are. I mean, these are like blue blood parades. Ron Miziker, who founded the organization, was part of the development team for the Main Street Electrical Parade back in the early 70s, and have expanded their entertainment around the world, especially in Asia. And so live entertainment, the entertainment factor within a theme park is super important. So talk to me, Mel, what is the role of entertainment inside theme parks?
I'm going to laugh because my first response was to mess up all of the wonderfully engineered people spaces in terms of traffic flow and industrial engineering and clogging. No, all kidding aside, I mean, entertainment, especially live entertainment, I mean, that's to me the software that drives the hardware, especially, again, going beyond that proscenium stage and getting the story out onto the streets is such a powerful thing. Again, when you're the designer of the permanent attractions, if you will, the lands, the buildings, and especially when you're walking through the parks, you kind of, at one level, want to see that static, stable condition of the way the land or the immersive environment was designed to be. So sometimes there's a conflict between the creative directors of the environment versus the creative directors of the entertainment things. But what I've learned, again, an eye-opener for me was shortly after joining Disney when Fantasmic opened up as a last-minute replacement for the Muppets coming to California that didn't happen. I think it was a $17 million investment. I mean, for something that was, 15, 20% what a major capital e-ticket investment would have been. But to have the return on investment, the population increase, the attendance hit that drove was such an eye-opener for Disney executives, for Imagineering executive. It certainly rose the kind of leadership capital and political capital of entertainment executives to realize the demand that people have for live. I mean, you just can't replace that live human factor. Yeah. And so again, the roots are so fascinating, going back to just ancient old celebrations, whether they're Roman triumphant arrivals, whether it's things like Carnival, but that idea of cultural gathering celebrations in the streets is such a powerful thing. And again, in our industry, it's so unique to be able to not just have that happen once a year or once every few years, but to literally in some places have that happen every day for, hundreds or thousands of people to come together and share in these collective stories that have such emotional resonance. It's really a powerful thing to get to witness and observe. Yeah, that's super. Well, here's a little bit about our guest, about Sean Chung. He's an Art Center College of Design graduate, Art Center in Pasadena. He's cut his teeth. He cut his teeth in the special venue team with Rhythm and Hues, and then now he's at Miziker Entertainment as a project director. Really creating a lot of fascinating things that, like you said, the software of the hardware. Making entertainment a bright and exciting part of a theme park visit. These are a few of the things I wrote down for you. A few of the things that he's worked on. You want to check them out? I mean, a 3D giant screen attraction. We're working on a dome theater that's under construction in San Diego right now. I mean, that just again creating those new formats is so fun. Chimelong Scare Dice, creating Halloween events, and to be able to accentuate the physical environment that's there, and to do this, introduce this whole seasonal celebration into different cultures is so fascinating and fun. The Journey of Lights Parade, again, a spiritual descendant of the Main Street Electrical Parade at one of China's favorite parks at Chimelong Ocean Kingdom, just a beautiful new park. And again, the new daytime parade at Genting Highlands. So he's been pretty busy over there in Asia.
Busy guy. Well, it's about time we push off of the dock. We're off to Miziker Entertainment in Television City, Burbank, California for our interview with Chung. Chung, it's very exciting to be here in beautiful downtown Burbank, California, visiting you at Miziker Entertainment. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for stopping by, Freddy. Mel?
Well, likewise, I'm so excited to be here with you guys. Ron's been a guru and a legend. I'm just excited because this is actually our first episode. I just realized to talk about specifically the entertainment. And, we're in show business. One of the things... you learn on day one of Disney University, when they OD on the pixie dust, is the language, that it's show language we're putting on the show. We're cast members, there's on stage, off stage. And a lot of times we're using that somewhat metaphorically, but in your case, this is the real deal. Live entertainment and using the gift of technology to immerse and engage the senses. I'm just so thrilled to dig into what you guys are doing around the world.
Yeah, I'm really glad you guys stopped by. I think there's a lot we can talk about today, and I hope I can answer at least some of your questions.
I'm just glad to catch you while you're stateside.
Yeah. That's, it's about 50-50 at this point, but I do like being based out of LA still. I think there's just still a natural kind of creative atmosphere in LA that is very conducive. It's nice to be comfortable and at home when you're coming up with these ideas, because when you're on site, when you're over there, you're so focused on the specific task. There's that thing you've got to get done, and everything's being poured into that. It's hard to kind of free your mind and come up with new ideas and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I got to give the listeners a clue in terms of the setting. I mean, it's this wonderful kind of classic LA courtyard office complex that you guys own, and right in the shadow of DreamWorks Animation and Disney Studios and Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I think the shadow of the Warner Brothers building is kind of probably hiding our light here, but it's just right in the midst of that kind of cultural creative hub that it
really is a
LA.
Hollywood bungalow type of feel here. It's really classic.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing what Ron did with these buildings, because these were originally kind of that courtyard style apartments, and basically took all of the space and converted every inch of it to offices. There's no more garages, there's no more anything like that. Everything now is just a big office space, and we somehow ended up right on, Riverside next to Priscilla's and everything like that.
Yeah, it's a great setting. I used to work at Crossroads of the World. It kind of totally reminds me of my old office.
That's
there.
right.
Yeah.
On Sunset.
So give us a little bit of background. You're also not just unique in that working with entertainment for theme parks, but unique in we've met with a lot of people with 30 plus years of experience in the themed entertainment industry, and you're coming in with about 10 years or so.
Oh, right, yeah.
So we got the young buck here with a lot of experience, but you come from a specific background, which makes very unique, I think, to what you're able to accomplish in the theme parks around the world. Tell us your story. Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? And where are you going next?
Well, I guess in thinking about this morning in the shower, the one thing that kept coming to mind was China. And not just the place, obviously it's a physical country, et cetera, but there's a cultural heritage and there's a history there that I only realized in the shower this morning has kind of drawn a through line to my career. So if at any point I start to ramble, please just whack me on the back of the head here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my mom.
Okay. Yeah.
If that's
good.
Weird or not.
No,
I don't know. I don't know how these podcast things go, but for me, it's an interesting starting point. because my parents are both from Hong Kong, right? And Hong Kong is a special administrative region. In 1997, it was handed back over to the Chinese. But for over 100 years, it was a British colony. So my mom grew up in Hong Kong, which means she's kind of Chinese, kind of American. She's actually a half as well. Her dad was a British sailor of some sort. So I'm either a quarter Scottish or Irish or British. We're not really sure.
Same here. I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely have no idea. But what was interesting was when my mom was growing up, one of her first jobs was a tour guide in China. And not the sense of, the tour guides you see nowadays with the flags and everything is preset and all that. It's more like you couldn't really get into China without a tour guide. This was like, 60s and 70s, where if you didn't have the authorized tour guide going with you on this trip, you weren't really allowed to wander and walk around the country.
You're not going. If you're not with the correct people, you're not going in.
Exactly. So you got to imagine that you go back one generation, that's my mom, and then you come to where we are now, which is like, hey, here's an internationally recognized award for a nighttime parade in a theme park in China that's visited by millions of people each year. And you're like, what happened between A and B, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that makes it interesting to me is that China doesn't have the history of theme parks that America or even Europe has. I mean, Disney Paris has been around longer than most of the other theme parks in China.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And to me, that's kind of my story as well. It's a story of not growing up in the theme park world, but somehow finding myself in the midst of this whirlpool of theme park activity that's now Asia.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Asia, it really is the new frontier and for theme parks, and you've seen it explode in a lifetime.
It's unprecedented, the growth. And Mel was just asking me, how I got started in the theme park part of it. That also goes back to a weird connection with my parents. My parents were like commercial and production, like photographers and videographers and things like that in LA in like the 80s and the 90s. So I have, you guys know what positives are? They're, the gel print positives.
Oh, sure.
So like I have in storage somewhere, I have like gel print positives of like Robert Downey Jr. when he was like 18 and doing his first auditions, like Angelina Jolie. Yeah. Wow. So like that was the kind of stuff my parents were doing. And at some point after I'd graduated college and everything, my mom was like, hey, you should talk to a guy I know named Paul Babb. Because I had just finished Art Center. I was really, over the whole college experience because I said, okay, why am I paying money to do this? I need to go out into the world. This is really, I was getting anxiety from being in school. So I got out of there and she said, you got to meet this guy, Paul Babb. Paul Babb is the head of the commercials department in Rhythm and Hues. And I get there and I say, hey, Paul, how you doing? We talk, we chat. And Paul goes, there's someone you should really meet. It's Don McBain. Do you guys know Don McBain?
Sure. Oh yeah, actually, yeah. So we just had him write an article for Themed Attraction. Yeah, that's great.
So Don was at RNH as well, and Don was downstairs, and Paul says, "You got to talk to Don. He's doing this thing." I don't really know what it, and Paul didn't really know what it was because Paul's commercials. I mean, that's where the money making machine was at RNH.
Rhythm and Hues.
Yeah, Rhythm and Hues. Sorry, Rhythm and Hues. Yeah, because the thing is with visual effects companies, you lose money on the big projects. Actually, like you get the prestige by doing the Oscar-winning Life of Pi, Golden Compass, things like that. But the money comes in from ancillary things like commercials and special venue. So Paul's like, you got to meet Don. He's talking to these people about special venue. And I go, okay, I have no idea what that is. Like, I came in to talk to you about commercials, maybe do a few music videos. Like, I have no idea what the special venue thing is. And he's like, okay, you got to meet Don. we're walking down to Don's office, and Don is standing up and he's walking away. And Paul's like, Don, hold up. You gotta meet this guy, Sean. And I was like, okay, let's go meet Don. And Don's like, I really have to go. I'm meeting this person from China right now. And he's like, if you want to come, you can come with me.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
Paul's like, oh, okay. Why don't you go with Don? I'm busy. I'm like, Paul. And so I follow Don. I get in an elevator, and into the elevator also comes Sandy Yao. Do you know Yao's 5D, Jill Wu, and all? Okay.
I don't.
Yao's 5D and Jill Wu, they do a lot of also special venue. They're based out of Taiwan, but they do a huge amount of special venue work, pavilion work, and things like that, also out of Taiwan and Asia. So Sandy Yao's is in there, and Don is like, Sean, Sandy, Sean. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I just casually speak to Sandy in my kind of broken but passable Chinese. Like, ni hao, ni say, ni zhen, ni xinai, and, you know, where'd you come from? Blah, blah, what are you doing here? And Don's like, oh, you speak Chinese. And I'm like, sure. Sure.
Like I speak Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, sure, I speak Chinese. And he's like, actually, perfect. Come with us into this meeting. Next room I'm in a room with Dawn, Sandy, and Charlotte Huggins over here. Because Charlotte was at Rhythm and Hughes restarting this special venue department. And Charlotte says, tell me your story in 30 seconds. And I go, okay, well, I was born in Hong Kong. I was born in LA. I grew up in Hong Kong. I went to an international school, so I speak perfect English, and I know American culture better than I know Hong Kong culture. I went to Art Center College of Design, and I got super anxious waiting around, so I rushed all my credits. I graduated, and then I came to meet Paul Babb, and now I'm here in your office. And
That's
she
cool.
said,
Great Hollywood
Under
story.
30 seconds.
yeah, and that was it. So after that, we started working on the Wanda project. And that's how it all began. Ryan, Charlotte, and I did the Wanda project. You know, those guys loved it. It's unfortunate what happened with Wanda. A lot of it was just poor kind of like big picture planning. You know, it wasn't the individual attractions or even the venue that was like, oh, this doesn't work, or like, because there was great designers working on it. That wasn't the issue. It was just Wanda didn't have the ability to go, okay, we need to get people into this thing continuously in order to keep it alive.
Right.
That wasn't their mindset. Their mindset was more like, oh, if we build it, they're just
Let's develop.
let's develop. Let's develop. Let's keep building. Let's keep building. Let's keep building. So Wanda happened, and then R&H kind of went away. Should I shift a little bit? So R&H kind of went away, and that's when Ryan and Charlotte and I sat down and said, you know what? Maybe there is something between the three of us that we can do, moving back into the heart of what Miziker Entertainment was, what Ron started all those years ago with, you know, the nighttime parade, with his work at Fantasmic when he was the live entertainment director at Disney. Like, maybe there's something there that
Which just a historical footnote. I was at Disney in '93 when that opened, and again, that was a kind of a fairly revolutionary game changer. I mean, Main Street Electrical Parade certainly was a high water mark, but in terms of kind of the investment in essentially a live entertainment thing that had the returns on investment that an e-ticket attraction,
right?
again,
right.
it's still
They're
going after all
back.
these years. But again, the attendance bump, the revenue bump. I mean, it was a really significant eye opener. A lot of folks at Imagineering weren't exactly, maybe jealous.
Yeah,
is
that's
the nicest
right.
way to put it, because I mean, there was definitely a rise in influence and political power. I mean, just the potential of what, again, putting on an actual show can do. What who knew? That Barnum was right.
And it's one of the, going back to China, it's been one of the hardest things to explain to a client, the importance of live entertainment, because on paper it's really not as sexy. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that appeal of like, oh, you're going to have the newest and the best. This coaster, it's just going to go faster than any coaster.
And
this screen,
200 tall,
exactly.
Iconic,
exactly,
weenie.
Exactly. This screen, it's going to have more D's than any. We're going to go 60. We're going to go 70. We're going to spray you with like scents, and it's like, well, yeah, you can keep adding these adjectives, and it's great. But there's something magical about live entertainment that I think, I hope we've captured in some way in Journey of Lights and our work going forward as well.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at a park and sat along the parade route and was directing where people could sit and crossovers in the parade route, and there was some connection that could happen between the live performers that just can't happen from, like, even Fantasmic. Like Fantasmic, you have to have that boat come around and have the princesses wave at the audience for it to have a connection. Otherwise, it's just cartoons.
Yep.
And there's something about that live entertainment and that connection, one-on-one, face-to-face with the audience that is really special.
Yep. I mean, it's weird, but it's why things like Jungle Cruise are such a special attraction, because of your tour guide that's smarmy and sarcastic. Like, you could spend billions developing a little animatronic tour guide in an attempt to recreate
Please don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In an attempt to recreate what an actual person can do.
Yeah, that's right.
But that being said, technology is critical to all of this, right? Because there are things that we can do that push it above and beyond, that accentuate the humanity. I mean, that's the best technology, right? You're accentuating the humanity. You're not just replacing it, because no humanity, but taking that humanity that you've got, taking that spark and just, I'm making hand motions.
We can see it. We can feel it. How do you tell a story when people listen with more than their ears? Stories change lives. They make us remember, but only when they're felt and not just heard. Storyland Studios builds the impossible. We turn big ideas into reality. We tell stories in 3 dimensions to stir the senses so you can walk into places you've only seen in your dreams, in real life and real time. Storyland's artists, architects, and artisans take stories out of the imagination and build tangible dreams that leave lasting impressions and memories that endure for years. What's your story? Storyland Studios is themed entertainment, destination design, production, and fabrication. Connect with the team at Storyland Studios to get started building your impossible dream today. Visit StorylandStudios.com or call now, 800-218-1932. That's 800-218-1932. Storyland Studios, your big idea's best ally. Tell me about the Chimelong Journey of Lights parade and how that came about. I kind of see that.
And again, for some of our American audience
that's good.
Don't know Chimelong, I've had a chance to experience the parks, and I think a lot of people may not understand the critical mass that is there, even if they've heard of Shanghai Disneyland or some of the other parks over there. But Chimelong is kind of a big deal.
I mean, to put it in terms of numbers, Chimelong's water park actually, I think, has the highest attendance. Or in 2018, I'm not sure about the 2019 ACOM index, but it had the highest numbers in terms of water park attendance across the world.
And that's water park.
Yeah, it's a water park. Yeah. It's just in terms of the physical mass of people that are moving around in China, its market is huge.
Yeah.
And Chimelong has captured that market perfectly. And for those who are unaware of, I guess, the geography, it's nowhere near Disney. It's nowhere near Shanghai or Beijing for Universal. We're talking about southern China. This is right next door to Hong Kong and Ocean Park. And all this stuff is within a 2 or 3 hours of what is southern China, the Guangdong province, right? That's where Chimelong has really made its mark. It's expanding, of course, and it's fighting for territory, but
Yeah, but if going back to the beginning of your story and saying there were tour guides letting anybody walk through, that was the only way you were going to see China, and now there's a massive tourist industry which Chimelong has capitalized on in a great many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, there's now the world's longest bridge connects Zhuhai and Hong Kong. So Hong Kong you have as one of the probably largest hub cities in the world, if not the largest, depending on how you want to measure it. They spent an insurmountable amount of money building a bridge that spans, I think it's like 30 miles, unless I'm wrong. It's like a 30-mile bridge so that you can get now from Hong Kong to Zhuhai, where Ocean Kingdom is, within like 45 minutes. Just to get an idea of how complex this bridge is, remember how I said Hong Kong was a British colony? Yeah. So they drive on the other side of the road. And in China, they drive like in the US side of the road. So in the center of this bridge, there's a transition zone in the center of this bridge where you actually switch the side of the road you're driving on. And then when you get on the other side, you are now on the wrong side of the road. Yeah. And you have to remind yourself, I'm driving on the wrong side of the road, but it is the correct side of the road. That's how much, effort they'll go through in order to create this kind of atmosphere and this ecosystem where it's just, guest friendly. Come in, make it easy, have a good time.
East and West meets perfectly right there on that bridge, I suppose.
Exactly.
So I was there when you received the THEA Award 2018. You and Miziker on the Chimelong won the award, but you were there to speak about it, about the Journey of Lights parade. And I kind of, as a young guy, I look at you and go, okay, man, this guy has like sort of hit a pinnacle with that sort of thing. Like that's a measuring stick. This is progress for you in your career. Talk to us a little bit about what that is. Tell us a little bit about it and why it was so revolutionary to parades, live entertainment, that sort of thing.
I mean, the thing that I remember thinking to myself every day at the end of the day when I would go back to the hotel room, scratching my arms because the fiberglass had somehow gotten in somehow. No matter what you do to try to avoid it, you always get fiberglass on yourself at the end of every day on site. I remember thinking to myself every day, I wonder if this is what like the Wild West felt like. I'm not gunslinging or anything, but it was a situation where everything was new. There weren't really like rules the same way that, if we were working stateside or even in Europe, they were the same rules as you have to do it this way, you have to do this way. It was just about going out there every day and figuring out the best way to make it work with whatever resources you have. I think Brian Gale probably said it one of the best ways, which is like, this is the best parade that has no right to be as good as it is. Like, it is incredible what happened there. And the innovations that we, came up with, they look like innovations now. At the time, they were just problem solving.
Yeah, it sounds like patching together, just one more thing to make this thing work.
Exactly.
Well, it reminds me, Tony Baxter, Tom Morris, we've had on, almost reminiscing about the olden days of, the Wild West of the creation of the industry, with, guys like Mark Davis, just figuring it out. Bob Gurr, can do. And it goes back to like the electrical water pageant, barges, chicken wire, Christmas lights, and still running. Ron
was telling us this story. He was like, there was it was opening day. We were like 8 hours away from when the electrical parade was meant to roll down the street, and he goes, I remember I was still on that float clipping off zip ties to make sure that every single light looked good. And I was sitting there going, I was doing that.
Yeah.
We were still doing that. Fast forward 20, 30 years, we're still using zip ties. Like, a lot of the other technology has advanced, but I was sitting on that float clipping off zip ties like hours before this thing was meant to roll down the street. Because sometimes things don't change and sometimes things do change. But there was this magic sense of like, hey, let's just make it work. And that's how, okay, so the Journey of Lights is special because it has this thing called the parade-wide event, right? We call it the PWE. And basically what happens is the entire parade, I'm talking every light on every float, but also every costume, every cart, immediately at the same exact moment, glitters. Like this beautiful shimmering white light just moves through the whole parade. It doesn't last more than 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds. And to be honest, you have to really, if you want to see the whole thing, there's only specific places in the park where you can see the whole parade. For the most part, you're seeing only 2 or 3 floats do it. But when you see the whole thing, you're like, holy crap, that's magical. And that specific effect was something that many people said, like, you can't do it. It just doesn't work because that's not how electrical parades are made. And a little bit of backstory, how are electrical parades made in terms of lights? Well, you don't just arbitrarily string Christmas lights up onto, a piece of scenic like that was, it's just you used to. But what you have to do in for example, even going back to Main Street Electrical Parade, you have to choose a specific type of light and a specific color for that light, and you have to string it up along a specific thing. Easy example. Pete's Dragon is green, right? Yeah. So the majority of the lights on Pete's Dragon are green. You're going to buy a bunch of green Christmas lights, not just any Christmas lights, but green Christmas lights. And you're going to string a bunch of green Christmas lights on Pete's Dragon, right? Okay, that's simple. But then you get to, what about something that isn't just one color? And what if we want it to change colors? Well, back in the day, to do that, you would actually have to just string up 2 rows of lights next to each other. So if you wanted Pete's Dragon, say you wanted the whole dragon to turn red at one moment, you would need to string up the whole thing with green lights and do the whole thing again with red lights, right? And you'd have to go through somewhere between months to years figuring out exactly how many lights, where to place these lights, how to attach these lights, and then figuring out exactly what color you want on each of these lights. That's just how you did it. If you wanted a shimmer to move through the pumpkin, like, you would need these tiny white lights that are on a completely different track than anything else, right? Than the lines of the pumpkin, than the lines of the carriage. You would need just these white lights going around kind of almost arbitrarily to create the shimmer. Well, Chimelong didn't give us years. Chimelong gave us months. So we went to the manufacturers around the area, even not even around China, just around the area. And we said, what is the best, most reliable LED product that you have? Just what is it? Like, we want to know what you guys are making. Like, literally what's coming off the factory shelf that you can just hand us first. And they're like, well, actually, we have this thing. It's RGB, so it's red, green, blue. So with that, you can create any color you want. They're like, we have these RGB LEDs that we make. They are not, cheaper than single unit lights. Nothing will be cheaper. But we sat there and we did the math and we went, oh, if we don't have to sit around and decide what every light is beforehand. If we can just string the RGB lights up and then program it as if the whole thing was kind of like a 3D mapped set or a scene or a stage, then really we could just buy boatloads of this stuff and just start stringing it up. Start stringing it up, create the shapes, do everything, but not have to worry about when they turn on or off or what color they have to be. Just start putting lights on there. Halfway through doing this is when we realized, like, oh, if we have a way to synchronize and control all these RGB lights, then we can do the thing that everyone said we couldn't do.
Right.
Right.
You're giving yourself control by just sort of going with what you got.
Exactly.
Just start painting. It's
exactly.
You've got a blank piece of paper. Start painting. You're giving yourself that opportunity to do that.
Exactly. So we started painting, and lo and behold, it actually worked, and it all goes back to China.
Yeah.
These LEDs could not have been purchased anywhere else for the price and the speed we got them at.
Yeah.
If we were in any other country in the world, we could not have gotten those LEDs made quick enough, and they would not have been the price point to make that feasible. We would have had to say, you know what? Sorry, guys. Yeah. Give us 2 years. We're going to sit down. We're going to develop this. You're going to have your parade 3 years from now. Instead, a year later, Journey of Lights is rolling down the road because we just started painting. Yeah. And we figured, just so we're clear, the headaches that that caused afterwards, the ripple effects were huge. For example, right now, the 2 world's largest lighting controllers, to my knowledge, are sitting in the Zhuhai barn in HOK right now. They are 2 custom-made ETC consoles that were unlocked so that they are pushed beyond any other lighting consoles that they've done before, just because that's just not how it's usually done. You don't have that level of control. It's essentially taking a 4K TV screen and trying to control every pixel.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we were doing, and lighting consoles weren't designed like that. So if you look at
but on 3-dimensional images,
on 3-dimensional images that you have to move around in time to the music, If you look at the parrot plane, right? I don't know if you guys have seen Journey of Lights recently, but it's the one where there's a big parrot from the 5D movie, and then there's a tree that he's kind of sitting on, and then I think Kiki is on top of the parrot. It's a very simple but beautiful float. That float required taking the world's 2 biggest consoles and smushing them together so that we could program it.
That's
crazy. That single
Good.
tree has more lighting control than the most advanced show out there in the world.
That's outrageous. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I want to just kind of bounce back to what I'm pulling out of this. And there's this amazing heritage that the 2 largest lighting consoles in the world are smashed together, and for that one float, or for the capabilities of that one float. And Ron Miziker was telling me once that when they were putting together the Main Street Electrical Parade, people were allowed to. Disneyland workers were able to get off of work and volunteer to dip the white lights in red or green right up to the very last minute, and that's the type of heritage that the project that you did for Chimelong has. And there's a genetic sort of flow from hand dipping Christmas lights to getting to such a advanced thing. And I think that's really fascinating. Also, there's sound. So talk a little bit about how sound flows through that sort of process. I mean, individually controlled speakers throughout the park.
Yep. So sound in a parade, it's like our script, right? It's really what the entire show is built around. More in some ways more accurate than a script. Actors are allowed to change and flub lines and things like that and improvise. With that soundtrack, once you have it locked, every moment of the show is built around that. So the importance of sound in a parade, I mean, Ryan has often said to me, parades start with the soundtrack. They actually don't start with the design of, this particular float or this character or this moment or this special effect. No, parades start with the soundtrack because that's where the heart and soul of that show is. I mean, the old tune, people don't go home from Disney whistling the color of the wallpaper, right?
That's right.
Right?
Whistling the architecture.
Architecture, yeah. So it's the same thing. That soundtrack is so important to us, and we've had the great opportunity.
If anyone's ever had a chance to sneak into a abandoned theme park, or just even walk around a closed theme park
without sound,
you've got that Scooby Doo heebie-jeebie. It's creepy without the soundtrack,
without the sounds
to guide your emotional through.
Exactly, it's completely different.
Oh, that's great.
And honestly, soundtracks are complicated in a parade, because what you have to do is you have to create this underliner, which is the theme for the entire parade. And then that underliner needs to play fluidly across all 8 units, right? All 8 floats, and the floats are kind of the center of these units. And then each float needs its own soundtrack. So all of that needs to stay in perfect sync in order for it to work. Otherwise, you're just going to have like this disconnected, each of these scenes is going to feel disconnected, and that's not what you want. You want it to feel like this holistic experience where each float is its own show, it's its own scene, it's its own moving stage, but it's still part of this greater parade. Yeah. So yeah, it was it required HOK to redo their entire sound system, actually, by the time they got it up and running.
One of the things that I'm impressed with is a topic we touched on with some of the Evermore guys is, again, getting entertainment out of just the box. It used to be when you went to Disneyland, you got 2 pieces of paper of print collateral. You got the guide map that had all the permanent attractions and ride shows, but then they would give you Disneyland Entertainment Today kind of insert that had all the live entertainment. It was great because you could find the Royal Street Bachelors and what time they were going on, or the Barbershop Quartet. But in your world, I think one of the interesting things is the idea of you guys zooming out and getting a little increasingly holistic. And again, same thing with the Evermore guys. They really are able to reinvent that park based on the seasons. Can you talk a little bit about some of your work with Chimelong Paradise and taking kind of a, I guess, not mundane, but a kind of a standard operating procedure fall Halloween event and elevating that?
Absolutely. It all comes back to the reason we do what we do is because we like to tell stories, and it doesn't matter if you're going back to Rhythm and Hues. When Charlotte, asked me, tell me your story in 30 seconds, like that's just the kind of people we are. We want to know stories. We want to know the characters. We want to know the worlds. We want to know why this place exists. We don't just want to have a good time. So Chimelong had and still has a very, very successful Halloween event each year that is just packed to an unbelievable... It's a little bit terrifying how packed it is. But
people don't understand how many people there are in the Pearl River Delta. I mean, it's a massive humanity.
And their event was based around a series of haunted houses, temporary constructions that would allow people to walk through mazes and things like that. And just, boo, people jump out, they scare you, they terrify you. Everyone dresses up. It's a lot of fun. It's a huge party. But what we went in and did was we said, what would be also good is if we started to build on the stories you have in these haunted houses, and we started to drag them out into the park itself. We started to expand what the narrative is, and we could take areas that you would look at and go, oh, this is just, it's just a courtyard between A to B. We look at an area like that and we're like, that's a story opportunity. Yeah. That's a place where you can tell an interesting tale about something. Like, we took the space that was just in between 2 haunted houses and attraction, and we said, this is now called Scarecrow Alley. Yeah. You know what we're going to do? We're going to build a little miniature barn facade. We're going to put bales of hay up everywhere. We're going to have scarecrows that are hanging all over the place. And you know what? We're still going to make it scary. Because you know what? Some of those scarecrows, real people, still walkers. So you have these mixtures of scarecrows and this facade. And then you go in and you just do this beautiful, simple lighting. And all of a sudden, this thing that is meant to just be, oh, I have to get from A to B. Suddenly, people are stopping, taking pictures. It's become a thing, and it wasn't meant to be. I mean, there's a beauty to that, where you're just taking a space that was meant to be empty, corridor, walkway, and suddenly, wow, it's an event.
It's a feature. Between the buildings is a blank canvas.
Exactly, the space in between the buildings, So that's a lot of what that's a lot of what we're actually focusing on right now.
Yeah.
We're looking at parks more holistically, and we're trying to think, you know what? Live entertainment, there's power there. There's impact. And the truth is, a lot of parks already have established attractions and things like that. They know what they're doing. They go, here's the box. Here's what we're putting in the box. This is the box. Leave the box alone. And we're going, cool. You have your box. Your box is cool. What we're interested in is just the space in between. Like, how do you give life? You know, it's probably super similar to the Evermore guys. It's like, how do you give this feeling of continuous life, continuous immersion, so the guest is always inside this experience? How do you do that? And for us, the answer is leaning towards, live entertainment. Yeah. Real people make real worlds.
Yeah.
In just about every park we're working on, that idea that it's not just about kind of the e-ticket marathon, running
E-ticket
and
marathon,
trying to hit bingo, with the six major, right? Because that's really how it used to be programmed. You had your kind of anchors and then the fillers, but it was all about how many attractions you can get in per hour, per month, per day. And what we're finding is the opportunity to think of the whole thing again as one big story canvas, and stay immersed in that reality. And again, to use entertainment, to use landscaping, to use food and beverage, and these cultural touch points that are engaging all five senses, and really keeping that emotional narrative going is really a powerful thing. So it's not just stop, start, 20-minute queue and then a 2-minute payoff.
When you're talking about F&B, and it's like, yes, we have a 16D attraction that shoots the smell of popcorn, but we go, yes, but I can actually make popcorn, and I can just sell you that popcorn. I don't need to shoot the scent at you.
You do it right, and people will queue up 20 minutes for that flavored popcorn at Tokyo Disneyland.
Charlotte and I always say our favorite attraction at Disneyland is the corn dog stand.
A lot of people's favorite attraction.
Yeah, it really is. Something that you can eat on the top of a trash can, standing and eating. And
exactly.
That is one of my things. I enjoy, going around the world and seeing the uniqueness of some of those, again, culturally specific food and beverage as well as entertainment offerings. But, again, all the flavored popcorn at Tokyo Disneyland, the waffles at Efteling, you name it.
I mean, I've only been on like 2 or 3 attractions at Epcot. Most of the time I just spend going around, jerking around the world and grabbing food from each of the places.
I was just reading an article about that. When you really think about Epcot and how food became a feature, it had to happen. It happened because of World Showcase.
Yep.
Everything was corn dogs and hamburgers, millions and millions of hamburgers sold at Walt Disney World, and they raised the game by opening up World Showcase because wait, these places have to taste like these places, and suddenly that became, now Adventureland has to taste like Adventureland. Tomorrowland has to it better taste like boysenberry if it's at Knott's Berry Farm. You know what I mean? So it's such a great thing to even move into the sense of taste as part of the theming and storytelling. That's a sidebar. So you talked about we digress. I'm hungry. It's for lunch. That's why you guys started talking about
this
food.
Is a food podcast, right? We were just setting up for.
That's right. So I want to give you a chance to kind of round out the story. So we started in China with your mom doing tour guiding in China, and we come to now when the tourism industry is on fire there, and they're building for it and they're prepping for it. You're moving into a future where that it seems that's going to be where you're going to spend a whole lot of your time and your energy and your effort. So tell me about that. Tell me about where you're going and what your hopes are for the region even.
My hopes are that what has happened with Journey of Lights, which is that ability to tackle an obstacle and turn it into a success and something award-winning. I want to see that repeated. I want to see young minds that go into China and say, we're not being held to the same rules. Like, yes, we can learn from the Disneys and the Universals of the world. Yes, they have shown us that this is one of the best ways to do it. But I want young minds to be able to go, okay, but why not also this way? Or why can't we do it this way? It's those kinds of developments that I really want to see in China. I would love to see big picture shifts, not specific technological advances, or I don't want to sit here and say I want to see live entertainment become the best thing ever in China and everyone's going to love live. No, I want to see people take advantage of the fact that China is new territory, that it is new to the theme park world, and as such, we get to rewrite the rules and do things differently. And yeah, sometimes you're going to fail. Yeah. Sometimes you're going to fail. But when you don't, I think the rewards are absolutely worth it, because what we're doing is we're recapturing that magic that was originally there when Ron was at Disney, when, the park first opened, that giddiness when Walt Disney wasn't a theme park guy before he was a theme park guy, right? That's what we want to capture. We want those new ideas, and I want to see something I don't expect. Yeah. That's what's going to blow my mind.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Blowing up the box.
Blowing up the
bar.
Well, Sean, it's been a real pleasure. We're really glad to have spent some time with you. I hope you can show us around this place a little bit and give us some background,
absolutely.
because it's a really creativity inspiring place, and we're just grateful for the opportunity to sit down and hear your story and hear about where it's going, because it's an exciting new frontier, isn't it?
Thank you so much, guys. You guys are awesome. It was so great talking to you guys. It was so much fun.
Thank you so much, Sean. We'll talk to you soon.
Well, Sean, such a great spark of energy and inspiration. And, I personally just loved his personal story, and, his mom and the cultural roots, and how that has just been, again, part of his unique training camp for doing what he do. Yeah, that's right. He's a really fun storyteller and engaging, and a lot of people sort of are drawn to that. He's as I gotten to know him, he just really sees his role as a collaborative leader, creating great things, but pulling out the talents of others. Well, Mel, the river is calling. It looks like it's time to head for home. Sound fair? Yeah, we better beat that river traffic. Yeah, all right. Until next time, thanks, Mel. The Themed Attraction Podcast is hosted by Freddy Martin and Mel McGowan. We're really grateful you take the time to listen to our show, whether it's on your long commute or your long hike to the top of some mountain somewhere. Because of you, we're able to do what we do, and honestly, we can't thank you enough. Would you do us one more favor? Would you leave a positive review for us on iTunes Podcast? It's a great way to get the word out about the show, and more people will be able to join us and maybe keep this podcast going even a little bit longer. We're just so grateful for you and your kind words. We want to thank our guest, Sean Chung. Get in touch with him on LinkedIn or find him at Miziker.com. Get access to more stories and interviews at themedattraction.com, an insider's look at theme park design by theme park designers. Follow the action on Instagram and Twitter at Themed Attraction. Connect with Mel by email via mel@storylandstudios.com or follow him on Twitter at Mel McGowan and Instagram at Visioneer. You can find me at freddymartin.net and follow my adventures at Skipper Freddy on Instagram and Twitter. Our theme music was composed by Rob Watson. Other music provided by the Lost Dogs. This episode was designed and produced by the one and only Dr. Barry Hill. Find him at barryrhill.com. You know, Mel, Barry has been working so hard to make his backyard garden look just like a bamboo forest. He said some of this bamboo has grown over 6 stories tall. He says he's working on getting it up to 7 stories tall, but that's another story. Thanks for listening, folks.